So far, my brain has been obsessed with two things for the last 7 days, and that is Succession and Tears of the Kingdom. And let me tell you, those things battling out in my brain right now have not made for a great attention span. So if you've kept up with me on the community tab for the last couple of days, you know that I'm currently getting chokeslammed by copyright, which is annoying, but fine, I guess. It's across all YouTube creators have to bear. However, this does put Nope in kind of a difficult spot, so it might be a little bit longer till that one comes out. However, you guys have let me know, and pretty vocally, that you want to see more D&D content from me, because for the last, I would say almost 5 years at this point, I have been pretty steadily playing D&D almost every other week, you know, barring adult obligations. But, you know, I think it's time that I share some of my experiences, especially as a Black frequent player of D&D. Now, for those of you who know, and for those of you who don't, my name is TK, your resident lunatic and chronic player of edgy Warlock Boys. I am here today to talk to you about my first experience in DMing. As some of you may know, I am one of the first members of a Discord server called Historically Black Dice. After being involved for about a year, I finally managed to get the guts to actually DM a game. One of the things I've noticed in our server is that a lot of our players are actually chronic DMs away from the server. And that's because if you are a part of a minority group, a lot of niche interests require you to heavily curate your own space and to be very careful with who you interact with. And that being a DM really helps facilitate that, because once you run a game, you get to pick and choose the players that you play with. And I've got to say that I ended up with a fantastic group. Truly, I cannot speak highly enough of my 3 players, and they are all wonderful. And they really helped make the DMing experience really rewarding. And you hear this all the time in corporate videos about like training and being a manager or whatever, but it really is important that you learn alongside your players. Now, despite the advice I received about starting with a module from a lot of people, including my husband, I actually started out with a one-shot homebrew campaign that I called The Butcher of Leftover Village. And I like to use maps a lot, so I decided to use Owlbear to sort of give my players an understanding of where they should go, what mysteries are there to solve, and I tried not to lead them too much, although, you know, I'm still debating on whether I did or not. It is imperative that you figure out what works for you, and you're gonna have to do it on the fly a lot of the time, which isn't bad, but if you're not prepared for it, it can be really, really stressful. Just to help you out, here are 8 things that I've learned from DMing the first time. Number 1, make sure your players get to do cool shit. In my opinion, that is the number 1 purpose of D&D. The coolest shit you can think of, that you have on your character sheet anyway. Tell a good story, have fun, do cool shit as often as possible. Actually, how I began my first campaign was in Initiative, and I kind of started it like Persona 5, where each character got to do one cool thing as they introduced themselves. It gave me a good idea right off the bat how each of my players want to enjoy this game. And this also gave me a chance to introduce a new mechanic as soon as possible. And that's the second thing I've learned, is introduce any homebrew mechanics as soon as humanly possible. This is a mechanic called Mercy. When there is one person left and when they are low health, you have the option, and you can discuss it amongst yourselves, whether you want to spare this person or not. There is one more thing that I actually wanted to bring up that I never got to, and right now it no longer fits into the campaign. So if you really want to include it, make sure you do it as soon as possible. Sometimes you gotta shoehorn it in there. No one will begrudge you for it unless your players are really, really picky. And then if they are, then it might not be the group for you. And that leads us to number 3, and that's you're gonna have to make a lot of decisions on the fly. Oh god, my one plan. What do I do now? Like, for instance, abandoning a whole game mechanic that you thought was going to be important but doesn't seem relevant anymore. You're also going to have to make a lot of decisions for your NPCs. Now, in my case, since I was doing a murder mystery, there were some times where I had to change who was going to be at a specific location at a specific time. But I realized that there was a specific character who had nothing to do with the problem at hand, who was going to be in a location and would only provide unnecessary red herrings. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. We'll put this plot relevant character in this position instead. You're going to have to change character arcs at the last minute. You're going to have to change story directions at the last minute. And it can cause you a lot of stress, but if your players are able to pick up on the fast story beats, you're golden, you're gravy. Remember, your players are intelligent and they want to tell the story as much as you do. And speaking of your players being smart people, number 4, just because your players guess plot twists and plot points doesn't mean your campaign is bad or boring. As a matter of fact, one of my players specifically called out Full Metal Alchemist as my inspiration for the end game.
It seems very like Full Metal Alchemist.
I was just about to say Full Metal Alchemist, bro. That's not looking good, bro.
And I felt a little self-conscious, but I realized that they were still having fun and still enjoying themselves, so stuck to my guns and I stuck to the story. You can kind of tell in a book or a show or hell, even a fan fiction, where someone thinks maybe their story is too boring, so they try to make it more interesting and more complex, awkwardly in the middle of the story. If you're DMing for the first time, try and keep it simple. Even if your players guess what you're doing or know where the story might be leading, and sometimes they might even try to intentionally derail you, and that's another issue for another video. I've seen people do that, and I personally think it's kind of rude. Have faith in your players and in your own writing ability, especially if you're doing a homebrew campaign. Your players will tell you if they're bored. Number 5, if you don't want your players to do something, don't give them the option. That's not to say dictate people's decisions, like if they want to seduce the bad guy, let them do it. Remember, the point of D&D is to do cool shit. But if you want your players to pick one of 5 locations, don't mention a 6th location that has nothing to do with the story, or don't call out a specific character that will only lead them in the wrong direction. There are times where you want to put like a little red herring here and there. Don't add those too much, otherwise the story won't go anywhere, because if your characters keep following the wrong clues, then they won't figure out the mystery, which is the point of the story. This is just writing advice in general, but if you want to misdirect your readers or your players, make sure that the red herrings are smaller than the actual plot points. Now, number 6 is kind of the opposite, and that is, if you want your players to know something, you need to tell them. Don't leave it up to a perception check or an insight check. If it is absolutely imperative, communicate that to them. Your players are smart, intelligent people, but they're not mind readers. If they don't find a clue that they need, they're not going to figure out the mystery, and if you have an important plot point that needs to be shown and they miss it with a roll of the die, that's only going to cause you stress. You're not giving away anything, you're just communicating. Number 7, and this is from an audiobook narrator, you don't have to do all of the voices for your NPCs. Don't hurt yourself. Preserve your voice. It's very, very important. But what you do need to do is convey what your NPCs are doing and how they feel. Don't feel embarrassed. You need to be dramatic, but you do have to communicate to your players what these people are feeling, what they're doing, and how this relates to the story. You don't have to go full theater kid, but maybe like 75% theater kid. Now, number 8 is really important to me specifically. Find out why you want to DM before you start your campaign. And it is going to take a bit of soul searching, and there are going to be a lot of people who say, well, it's not that deep. To me, it is that deep, because I've said before, D&D is really important to me. And if I can be a little bit dramatic here, D&D helped me find a community when I was at my lowest and most lonely, and as a result, helped me believe in love again. Like, it literally unbroke my heart, and now I'm marrying our friend group's de facto DM. It means a lot to me specifically, and I had to do a little bit of soul searching, like, why do I want to DM? Not even how, but why? And I spent a lot of time watching podcasts. I watched a lot of Dimension 20. I really look up to Brennan Lee Mulligan just as a storyteller in general. I knew that I couldn't exactly emulate that. You cannot spend your time wanting to copy DMs from very well edited podcasts. There is no way you are going to be able to copy that. Things go wrong. Players get distracted. And as a first-time DM, I can't say specifically what my purpose in the story is, but I know what I want is to make sure my players have fun. There are a lot of people who say that I want to tell a story. Well, if you want to tell a specific story, then you might want to stick to writing a novel. Or I want it to be a huge sandbox and I want the players to do whatever. Pick the kind of players that want to get distracted, that want to go down the rabbit hole. It took me months to come to the decision that this is something that I wanted to do. On some level, no, it's not that serious. But for me, D&D is more than a hobby. I think that since it's a part of my life, that I need to treat it as seriously as every other decision that I make. And the serious decision I had to make was I want them to feel how I felt when I played my first game. And that is when I sat down at that table and I looked at the faces of the people smiling at me and wanting me to join them. I felt an immense sense of relief. And if I cannot pay that forward, then I have failed as a DM. There will be some self-consciousness, yes. There is a part of me that is always like, did I do a good job? I truly do believe as long as you figure out why you want to DM and figure out how you're going to accomplish that, then you are good to go. I feel that my first experience DMing with the players that I had was incredibly rewarding. And I hope that if you want to DM, you feel the same. And I fell into the trap early on of wanting to DM like the next big actual play podcast. You really shouldn't do it for that reason alone. And, the thought is fun, but you really should be there for the experience and the experience of your players. It was really rewarding and really fun. Now, I don't think I want to switch over to the whole chronic DM type beat. I will say, being the DM, it's a lot easier for me to pay attention. The ADHD is strong. It was so much fun. And it really brought me back to like the first time I played D&D where I felt like, yes, this is something I want to do for a really, really long time. And I encourage that if you're at all curious, that you should give it a shot. You don't have to take any of the things I said to heart. Like I said, for some people, it's just not that deep, and that's fine. Maybe my advice is actually good sometimes. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, I make a video out of it, and it has 1 or 2 good points. With that being said, please like if you like this video, please subscribe if you really like this video and would like to see more. If you would like to support the channel, you can find me on Patreon, where I post videos every Thursday night before I post them on YouTube on Fridays. Nope is coming at some point. I'm still getting chokeslammed by fair use. I will be on vacation the 2nd week of June, so there is a possibility that you will see another supercut video. It'll probably be Yuri on Ice. We'll figure it out. You can find me on every piece of social media. Now, you may not be able to find me on TikTok as much anymore because I found that TikTok distracts me and I don't get any work done. I've had to take it off my phone, so you may not see me on TikTok for a while, but you will still see me on Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr, but especially Tumblr, because fuck Twitter. And with that being said, stay weird, lovelies, and happy eating. How did you guys like it?
Oh my goodness.
I'm having a great time. I've been smiling this entire time.
I'm glad.
Oh my goodness, yeah. When I talk about it, it's kind of feel like a high.
Yeah, I went from playing trying to play the cool guy, and then my character just evolved into like the NCIS guys.
Yeah,
I was just channeling like those special victim unit shows. I was just like, yo, what's going on with this person?
yeah. Oh, you guys have been so great. Like.